Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a busy day for you. Didn't realize you guys were kind of pulling the trigger today.
Well, it was so interesting. I said to Andrew yesterday, I said it's so ironic that we're talking about the nomination process, and today's my nomination. So it's it just worked out, I guess.
How are you feeling about it?
Well, it's a pretty simple process. Probably be about 30 minutes because I'm an incumbent. Um, there, the Constitution allows me to be nominated, and it's just as long as I meet a certain criteria, I go forward with nomination. So it's a pretty simple process, and it's not like a traditional nomination where you have, six people running against each other with 10,000 people showing up. Like this part of Toronto, they can be like you could literally have 10,000 people at a nomination meeting.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot less busy than that one. I think we've got about 150 people signed up for tonight.
Welcome, everybody, to Module 2 of Taking the First Steps. This is the nomination process. With us today is Abdi and Michael.
Hello, everyone. So the Be Heard project is a series of webinars that are trying to help familiarize and introduce people to what the political process looks like in Canada, specifically from the viewpoint of someone who's interested in running and kind of taking that first step and taking that initiative to put themselves on the ballot. So for a sense of background, how this came to be, we're looking at the perspective of racialized progressives with various political campaign experiences coming together to bridge the gaps of knowledge so that more Canadians do really feel comfortable enough to kind of, put themselves in those shoes, make that first really challenging step of seeking a political nomination. We're guided by a vision of collecting free videos and blog materials that enable people, especially racialized Canadians, to feel and be comfortable and considerate enough to seek political office. And our guiding principle is that no person should be limited from accessing this material, regardless of race, income, location, or partisan ideology. Again, it's not limited to any one group, one party or clique, for example. This is really open to all Canadians. We hope that it'll be an informative toolkit, for example, on what people can and should do if they're interested in running this, and that really we're kind of limiting the barriers and access to those opportunities. We know that there's a lot of different organizations doing something similar to what we're doing. I mean, our intent here is not to kind of detract from them or take attention away from them, but it really is to complement those efforts and try to offer our own unique insights. We've all three of us have been uniquely involved in political campaigns in some way or another, and trying to continuously try to improve the knowledge aspect of it as well.
So this is Module 2 in an 8-series program. So our last session was Why Do You Want to Run with Matthew Green, and we'll be continuing on in weeks to come. So our guest speaker with us today is Michael Coteau, the Member of Provincial Parliament for Don Valley East. So Michael's background, he's part of the Ontario Provincial Liberal Caucus. He was elected in 2011 to Queen's Park. He served as minister in various capacities and portfolios. He ran the 2019 provincial Liberal leadership race, and he also served as Toronto District School Board trustee. Thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you so much for doing this. I think it's so needed.
So the topics that we'll be covering today are macro ones are seeking a party nomination, so the forms and associated finances, and then the second half will be the process overview, so focusing on the green light to nomination day, number of supporters required, and soliciting support for nomination day. So off the get-go, there's some paperwork involved, and it varies depending on what level of government you're trying to get involved with and which party. So each party has a national campaign team that establishes what the contestant form looks like. So they typically are either an individual form or an entire package that party asks you to fill out. We've included a couple of different emails here, not to limit it off, but just as examples. If you were seeking the nomination in a federal race, your initial first step would be to email the party email that you want to run for. and then letting them know where you want to run for and asking for the package. The packages can include, but are not limited to, personal disclosure questionnaires, declaration of candidate responsibilities, adherence to party policy, anti-harassment statements, and party membership list confidentiality agreements. They must be completed and properly executed. Some require a notary. You'll also have to do a criminal record check and submit your history. And then the party can also demand additional documentation they deem relevant for the evaluation of if you're a fit contestant for their party. Michael, do you have anything you kind of want to add from your own personal experiences here?
No, I think the overview is everything you've covered seems to be very comprehensive. I'd love to to talk a bit about what the process was like for me, and also some of the people have to take when deciding to put themselves forward as a candidate for any political party.
Mm-hmm.
So just before we kind of start nailing the questions, we'll kind of expand a bit more on just some other conditions here. So there's also initial costs associated with your Greenlight application, traditionally non-refundable. So an example is the federal Liberals ask for a $1,500 certified check or bank draft. And depending on what kind of where you come from, your income level, this may not necessarily be readily accessible to you, and it may serve as a barrier. And we'll get a bit more into that in the latter half of the presentation about resources to consider. You'll have to submit a credit check required, and you'll also have to disclose any domestic and foreign assets and liabilities. It's of note, so in the event that any nomination contestant has spent or received $1,000 or more during the nomination contest, a report has to be submitted accompanied with copies of certain Elections Canada forms to make sure that you're still following the rules and regulations. And this has been a challenge for some candidates in the past of not adhering to this rule.
I'd also like to add quickly on that one. It's interesting. I know we're going to talk about it a bit later, but it is something that our party recently changed, changing the actual fee schedule for someone to enter into a nomination because of those issues you brought up. Some people may find it very difficult to just cut a check for $2,200 to participate in democracy. And I think that addressing those types of issues, which our party's done, is something that that has to be revisited with all parties across this country.
Absolutely, yeah, and that kind of fits in within a theme of some of the common challenges that people running for nominations find. It really is this not only organizing your finances, but you have to take into consideration that there might be an element of debt that you have to repay. There's a certain element of stress and surprise there, and also this idea of being vetted to see if that you're an appropriate fit within any party or even running at all. So looking at the sort of public statements and social media posts you made in your past, whether or not those can help or hurt you. Social media, as we know, never really goes away. So these are also things to consider, and they're common hindrances that people find in the nomination process. So absolutely, you're right, Michael.
Yeah. And we find now, and I say this to my, to my two daughters when I talk about social media, it doesn't matter what you put on and what you delete. Once it's there, it's there. And not only political parties, but employers. And, when people apply for boards, so many different pathways that can open up for an individual when it comes to their success in life. Has a lot to do with certain criteria being met, and one of them is your social media presence. One simple comment that you may have said offhand, and then a couple minutes later decided that wasn't reflective of who you were. That can have a huge impact on your employability and other elements of pathways in life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's also really important to remember that that seeking a nomination or being a candidate in a nomination process, there's a distinction between running for the nomination and being the candidate themselves. So There are rules barring you from, for example, using party paraphernalia, using logos, kind of attributing yourself to the party. So no person can officially represent themselves as a candidate of a political party until they are officially nominated or acclaimed at a nomination meeting. And no person can use party logos or any material until they are officially nominated as a candidate. So anybody who's running for the nomination to be the candidate has to be cognizant of some of those limitations. They can't quite call themselves, party candidate for X writing, but there's somebody who's running to be the candidate. And when we think about seeking a party nomination, it's important to consider what are some of the different resources available to you. A strong one, for example, is that you can connect with Canadians that come from similar demographics or similar backgrounds from you, especially income demographics, social demographics. You can consider crowdfunding or soliciting donations from family and friends for initial greenlight application. You can look to advocacy groups that have funds set aside to support racialized and progressive candidates. You can review all the different types of how-to guides that are available open source. But really, it's important to kind of look at the breadth of the different resources available to you and see where they're applicable and where they can help you. Most times, you're not going to be alone. There will be some group or some person or some resource out there to give you a hand in this process.
And Michael, was there any kind of resources external, maybe either financially or non-financially, that assisted you in your previous campaigns or leadership, or that you know of that could help others?
There are some organizations, for example, back when, I do believe back in 2011, there was some assistance that was provided to me by, I think it was, if memory serves me correct, it's so long ago, but there was an organization, I think it was Black Vote Canada, that encouraged people to donate to specific candidates based on, the fact that they were from the African Canadian community. And I know that the rules have changed a lot. So third-party donations, unions and, for example, corporations can't donate like they used to, but there was a time when, for example, when I was a school board trustee, that the Campaign for Public Education supported me, and that was a group of labor organizations that came together that had a common interest with parents in regards to the state of our schools and the state of education. So that used to happen a lot more before. Now, because of the rules changing, it's a lot different. But there are groups that are out there that encourage their members, that encourage the people that they represent to go out there and help. But it's done with a very fine line because of the rules that are in place today.
Absolutely.
So this is the fun part where we get to kind of harass you a bit with a few questions about your life experience. So we do have kind of the ones we've written out here, but there is one that I'll want to add in the mix. So getting started. So before public life, what did your career and upbringing look like?
So I grew up in Flemington Park, which is a neighborhood in Toronto, across from the Science Center. It's a very vibrant, multicultural community. Very large Caribbean population when I was growing up, but made up of so many different communities. In my building alone, there was, there were people from the Filipino community, Indian community, Korean. We had people from Europe. It was just a really incredible experience for me. And, I was very involved in my community growing up, and eventually I got to Don Mills Junior High School, which is middle school now. And my buddies encouraged me to run for president of the school, and I did it. And I was successful. I got elected to school council. It was funny. I don't think I've told anyone this story, but my motto, my election slogan back then was "Don't be a dodo, vote for Coteau," which is pretty funny, right? Now that I think about it, but it worked. And it was funny. It was a dodo bird with like an X across it, and one of my buddies put it together. So a few of us ran that campaign, and something inside of me was I really loved politics, and Eventually, I went off to university, got involved with the Ontario Liberal Party, walked into the headquarters, didn't know anyone in the party, and said I wanted to help, and that was really the start of my my time in politics. Got involved on campus and became the president of the Young Liberals, and started working for a cabinet minister. Traveled a bit, came back to Toronto, and decided to put my name forward to run as a school board trustee, and that was really my first 18 years ago. My start in being elected. I've gone through this election coming up. Will be my fourth as a provincial Liberal member, and I ran 3 times as a school board trustee. So I've gone through 6 elections so far. This will be my 7th.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So that kind of leads us into question number 2. So there's that transition period, obviously, of going from working for a cabinet minister to deciding to run for school board trustee, and then even going from that to running for MPP. What drove you to make that decision of not just running for the school board, but also making that jump to provincial politics and eventually leadership?
You know, it was interesting. I was telling someone this story a few days ago. You know, I was involved in politics for a long time, and you know, before I ran for office, and when I was probably around, I would say 26, 27, maybe 26, I decided that I didn't want to work for a politician ever again. And I did that because I was a bit discouraged with politics in general. And I actually, I took a step back away from the Liberal Party, and just was not, I paid attention. I actually even went to a convention, but went as an independent. And eventually I decided one day that, you know, if I love politics so much, if I'm going to do it, I'm actually going to put my name into the mix and work on behalf of the community rather than working, you know, for a politician. And I'm not saying that to discourage people from working with politicians. It's a great experience, but I worked for a long time you know, in different political offices, and I decided that, you know, I wanted to have a different type of impact. And in 2003, I was around just turning 30, so I think I was around 29. I knocked on every single door in my riding. I think it cost me $5,000, $6,000 to do it, and I had 3 or 4 friends that committed the entire summer to work with me in the fall. And despite not having the you know, the support of the local MPP and the local councillor, the local trustee, and the organized labor group, I was able to win, and that was really a game changer for me. But the real drive for me was the ability to, you know, to make change in my community. You know, I grew up listening to you know, classical hip hop music. I always had a bit of a suspicion about politics as a whole, you know, never really trusting, you know, the political structure. And I decided that if I really wanted to make that difference, I would have to place myself into the mix to try to get some things done. That was really my motivation and inspiration.
I guess from there, so kind of flash forward to the past 2 years, what made you decide that you wanted to kind of put your name forward and put yourself out there to run for party leadership and eventually a bit more than that?
You know, I really wanted to speak to the issue within the party, like being a liberal. I wanted to speak to the issue, and I believe I accomplished this, of, you know, what it really means to be a liberal today. What does liberalism mean, and how does it apply to the world around us today? You know, there seems to be an attack on liberalism in general, not only in Canada but around the world. And you know, people have isolated the politician or the politics of today to being what liberal is. But, you know, the true essence of being, you know, someone who believes in liberal values is to believe in the rights of the individual and the protection, you know, of the individual, and to do what's good for the collective, rather than the specific individual. So protect the rights, but make decisions that are the best interest of the population, the people. And I think now more than ever, with all these changes that are taking place around the world, from the displacement of workers and the gap between the rich and those who don't have as much, the consolidation of different types of industries, and just the technology shifts, all these things happening all at once. We really need to re-examine what's that glue that holds us together. What is that those philosophies and ideologies that meant so much hundreds of years ago? How do they, the ones that we have today that we've inherited, that are part of our system, like, capitalism as a whole, what does it mean today? And I think that's the conversation people need to have, not just the conversation on personalities and political parties, but the philosophy and ideologies that bring us together. I think that's what's lacking in Canadian politics today.
Absolutely. From your personal experience, what do you think is the biggest deterrent for underrepresented demographics seeking office? What do you feel like is the biggest advantages that were there for you as a minority candidate? And can you please provide a few scenarios where being a minority candidate has been an advantage in of itself?
Right. So I think some of the biggest challenges people have, the challenge of not having political experience. I was fortunate enough to work within an environment. I was in the mix in Ottawa, Carleton University, working, within an office with, political operatives and policy people. I worked within the Liberal Party, both federally and provincially. As a volunteer. Being on campus, like all of that stuff adds up, and you eventually have this understanding of what the system looks like. People think that they can just jump into politics and say, I want to run for politics, I'm going to run for office, and it's gonna work. But people don't realize that, half the battle is the build up to, where, you deciding that you want to do it and who do you have on your side. The other piece that's a big challenge is money. Like, people don't realize that this is, running for office is very expensive thing. You could spend on a leadership race. What was the Conservative buy-in for the federal leadership race? $300K?
Something like that.
That says a lot. But at the same time, you don't want, a really, really, really low fee. Like in Toronto for the mayor's office, I think it's what, $50 or $100, $200. I've never run for mayor. But I mean, you get 100 people on the ballot, right? So I understand that there's some discussion and debate around, the cost of entering a race. But I do believe that, we should try to do everything we can to make politics as accessible as possible to let people run. It's a big deterrent. So you can, okay, let's just say you get your name onto the ballot. The next question is, well, how are you going to get your name into the households of the people that you want to represent? Like to do one mail out, in a riding like mine, 42,000 homes, to print something and to mail it out will end up costing you between $10,000 and $15,000 just for one mail out. During a provincial campaign, you want to try to get 2 or 3 pieces out as much as possible. If you're coming in with 200 volunteers showing up on the weekend, you can accomplish that kind of stuff by knocking on doors and getting material out. If you don't have that volunteer base, you're going to be spending a lot of money trying to get information out. And, it even makes it more challenging as trustee because there's no tax rebate. So if you donate $500 to, I think $750 is the max to a trustee who's running for the school board, there's no tax incentive to the actual donor. So that even makes it even more challenging because people will say, I'm not giving $750, I'm going to give $200. So it's all of those pieces that come into play. Me individually, being being a Black guy growing up in a place like Toronto, Flemington Park, I think what it did for me, it gave me a bit of, I would say, the street smarts you learn in a neighborhood like mine, I think really position you well for the world of politics, because there's a lot of different types of personalities out there and people who will try to bully you, people who will try to push you around. There'll be people who will try to influence you, and having that street, I guess, um, just understanding really prepared me for the world of politics, and it served me well in many ways to this date. And I think we need more people who understand what's going on in communities, and tough communities in politics, because it will allow them to stand up for themselves more and to navigate better.
Can you think of any scenarios? I know you talked a lot about Flemington Park. Did it help, for example, that you were really so intertwined in your community and you were kind of already well known? Did some of your past experiences, kind of just growing up and just being a familiar face in the neighborhood, help? For example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had there's one guy in my neighborhood, found out I was running, and he came to see me. This was when I was a school board trustee. He said, he goes, what do you need? And I said, I need sign locations. And he said, okay, how many signs do you need? I said, as many as you get. He came back like 2 days later, had 100 sign locations for me. That it makes a huge difference having that type of relationship, in your community. And it's a nice feeling to have people that you grew up with, that you've known most of your life. And remember, I went to the community I represent, Grenoble Public School, is where I went to elementary school. Don Mills Middle School, it's the school I went to. Victoria Park, I went to that school. These are the schools I grew up in, and not only do I get to meet knocking on doors, I bump into people all the time that went to school with me, and to me that's a pretty cool feeling. And especially, when someone has a problem and they call you, and it happens all the time with me, just randomly out of the blue. Well, do you remember me? We were in this class together, and being able to help someone from that perspective is a pretty good feeling. And those relationships matter.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So the last kind of set of the questions here. So what piece of advice do you have for those that may not think they have the political capital or experience necessary to make a difference in elected office?
So I always tell young people, and I know this audience is many different folks, but when I go into schools and I speak to young people, I always tell them that they have to remember that politics is really about decision making and about applying those decisions into rules. And I always say to young people, I want you to think of this perspective. Anything you can mention, it doesn't matter what, any object you pick. It could be a cell phone, for example. There's probably thousands of regulations and legislations, government directives that determine how this device can be used in the world around us, from privacy to software to importing rules to even down to the actual products and material that's being used to create it. So my point is that we live in a world of rules and decisions, and that politicians are the ones that do that. So I think that basically giving your ability to make a decision on behalf of your community to a person to do that in a legislature, city hall, school board, or in a place like the House of Commons it's a pretty big thing to give away. So I always encourage young people to participate in that process, and it doesn't mean they have to run for office. It means that they have to pay attention, like really pay attention to the world around them. If they don't like something, pick up the phone and call that politician. Send a quick email. Say something on social media. Organize something at your school. Be involved and pay attention. Don't let people make decisions for you and just get away with it. And when you have something inside of you that kind of just causes a bit of a rumble in your stomach, something that gets you a little bit angry, that's actually a good thing. That means that you're not happy with what's going on. And, to cultivate that, that feeling into some type of action. So that political capital, that experience that people think they may not have, you have to start exercising that from an early age. And if you're even, not a young person and it's something that you start to pay attention to, that's a good thing. Start to exercise that ability to be involved in the process. And through that, through that awareness, through that the ability to understand how to be part of it, that's where you start to build that experience, and that's where you start to build that political capital. And I'll tell you, anyone who goes through that experience and actually influences a decision or makes some type of change will understand that they have a role to play in the world of politics. And so you don't just wake up one day and say, I want to be a politician. This is something that you have. It has to be part of who you are and and how you actually work within that community you live in. And to be involved in politics doesn't mean you have to be elected, but to be elected, you have to be involved in politics beforehand in some way.
Absolutely.
And so it is your nomination day today. And
Yeah.
I know we talked a bit about your process experience previously, but do you mind sharing with us kind of a bit more into detail of your experiences with the nomination process, both when you initially ran, but this moment now, kind of as an overview of just like sharing the wealth of knowledge?
Yeah, so the nomination process, I've been involved in so many different types of nomination processes. And you could have all the same rules, but the scenarios are very different from one another. In 2011, you can remember that Liberal Party wasn't too popular, and many people didn't think that the Liberal Party would be able to pull it off. My predecessor, David Kaplan, who passed away a year ago, I believe this Saturday, decided that he wasn't going to run again, and he said that Michael or Shelley Carroll, the city councilor, would make a great addition to the Liberal team, and I decided that I got a phone call from some folks within the party, and they said, "Would you be interested in doing this?" And at that point, I spent 8 years as a trustee. So I decided to do it. And you have to remember, this was like a month and a half before the general election. So they put together they opened up the nomination. I put my name forward. I was the only name that was brought forward at the time. And 2 weeks later, I was knocking on doors. I took a leave of absence from my job as the executive director at a national literacy organization and went to knock on doors. I think the party and folks, who were supporting me locally knew that, I understood the elements of the campaign because of my school board campaigns that, were really good campaigns. And, so then I was elected, so I went from, within a 2-month period, having no clue that I was running provincially to being a member of provincial parliament 2 months later, which is it's a very odd story in politics, because usually people are building up for 2 years to get to that point. So, so I didn't go through the traditional nomination process, but I've seen nomination processes, and especially in places like Toronto, where you can have 6,000-7,000 people sign up to be Liberals, 2 or 3 candidates, and a lot of competition. And I've seen that, in Scarborough Centre was like that. Many of the Scarborough's, ridings in the West End, in the Peel region, they're massive. So they're very challenging time periods, and especially when someone, puts 2 years of hard work into selling memberships, raising money, and goes into a nomination battle and loses. That's especially when you've got thousands of people showing up to support you. So it can be a very challenging endeavor. But a couple of cool things we did as a party recently is we eliminated the membership fee. So in Ontario, as an Ontario Liberal Party member, there's no cost, which is, I think, a great thing for democracy, because before it was $20. So, if you have a family of 4 like mine, and everyone's eligible to be a member with the age restrictions, that's $80 to sign up to be Liberals. That's a lot of money. That's groceries, right? But the other factor with the nomination process, and you brought this up earlier, in regards to the cost, to go through a nomination process, you've got to pay a certain amount of money. I think with the Ontario Liberal Party, it's $2,200, and that's to do like the background checks, the processing, because it's very expensive to process, literally hundreds of these nomination forms. So what we did recently is we made the price half price. So I think it's $1,100 if you're female within the party, and if you're a youth under 30, it's $500. So we've put a different tier system to the cost of running, and we also, as Liberals, the Ontario Liberal Party, there was a commitment by our leader to have exactly a minimum of 50% female running in the next election. So PLAs, provincial Liberal associations, can actually say, we put forward a plan, and in our plan, we're only going to allow, we're looking for this type of person, a young person, female, and that's who we'd like to represent the riding. Now, that's up to the PLA to decide which direction they'd like to go in, but that's something that's new within our party.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for sharing, Michael.
Yeah.
So we'll continue on with the second half of the presentation here.
Okay.
So a big part of the process is really getting that green light to go through the nomination day. So a part of that is kind of soliciting support, kind of getting those signatures you required, getting those party memberships sold. I'm sure you guys remember back in the day, you have during the nomination meeting, candidates walking around with stacks of party membership forms, doing the fundraising, doing the small fundraising, whether it's at a few houses, something big at a banquet hall. So really getting a combination of small and large donations, but also being involved in the community, being in the community, having those conversations, talking about the issues in the community, kind of tailoring your campaign to what the community needs and what is required of them. And it kind of really pitching yourself to why you would be the best representative for the party, and kind of building on your past history, your past experience, kind of doing that insight into what the community needs and trying to tailor yourself to those needs. And then in some cases there are nomination debates, or there's where you can kind of get a chance to pit yourself against other candidates and show why you are the best qualified, or how you would represent the riding's interests differently in comparison to other candidates.
And Michael, do you have anything you want to add with regards to that period of time from when you get greenlit to that nomination day, about like experiences or things people should consider that maybe we're not looking at?
Yeah, this is a very this can be a very challenging part of the process for people, because I think earlier it was said that you can be part of a process, but you're not a candidate until you've actually been greenlit. So you have folks out there who are kind of in this weird space where they're running to be the candidate, and they're just waiting for that green light. Then they become an official candidate. So you're running to be a candidate, then you become a candidate, and you're just running to be a member. So the green light period can be frustrating, because I know federally, for example, there were folks that that were on hold for a long time, because you're 300 plus ridings across the country. It's a difficult and timely time. It can cost a lot of time to actually process stuff. So you had a lot of people who were just waiting. So it's you can put the forms in, and if that region for some reason is not part of that priority within the party in regards to processing, because there's other things that come up, a person could be in that process for months, and it can be very frustrating. But it is an important part of the process, because it allows the party and the actual person to understand exactly what where that middle ground is, where that balance between, is this the right person, do they reflect the values of the party, and it allows for people to really understand if this is something that they want to pursue. Because once you're greenlit and you actually commit to the process, it starts a whole new series of actions that are necessary, like the official fundraising, and the legislation that would actually cover that type of that part of the process.
And how did you find having those conversations with the public about why you would be the best choice for representation, or how you differentiate yourself from others?
Yeah, it's interesting because going out there and selling yourself is a difficult process, especially if you're not used to talking a lot about yourself. It's not something we do every day, right? But I would have to go out there and say, if I was, obviously running as a provincial Liberal member, I would talk about the fact that, I do have experience working within the party. I, do have experience within political office. I have experience, working on campaigns. So it's really trying to convince people within the party, because all you're doing is trying to convince the members that you're the best person for the job. And it's a very partisan exercise versus going out there and actually talking to people about being the best candidate to represent the community within the Ontario legislature. So they're two different campaigns. When you're running to be the candidate, for the party, you are very focused on Liberal policy, internal issues and challenges, and really promoting as much as you can your experience to an audience that believes in the same values as you as Liberals, right? So it is a very different process, and then boom, once you have that nomination, it becomes completely different. It's you're talking, yes, from a partisan lens, but in more general terms. So it's a very interesting steps. They're very interesting steps to get to that point.
So just bridging into that, so one of the key components obviously is number of supporters required. And as you've mentioned, the Ontario Liberals and the Federal Liberals now offer 3 memberships. So it is a kind of a unique approach for each party in terms of the number of signatures or memberships that you need to call a nomination election. So for the Federal Liberals, for example, before any nomination meeting is called, the electoral district must be able to document a thorough search for potential women candidates and other candidates who reflect the demographics of the community. My understanding is OLP is very similar. And so a condition for the Federal Liberals is you need to have 150 registered Liberals in the local EDA. So what this used to mean was you had to have had 150 people that were up to date with their memberships, or you've sold the difference to make sure that there's a minimum amount in that riding. In addition, they would require strong grassroots fundraising. For example, a 15 additional victory fund, which is monthly donors for the Liberals, and 15% of the funds required for the local electoral campaign. Do you have anything you want to add on that, Michael, in terms of your own experience?
I believe that was those. I believe it was Prime Minister Trudeau during his time where they've set certain requirements that that people had to actually have in order to be nominated as the candidate, even within the held ridings. So I think it's a good thing because it does, it ensures that people are having regular meetings within their provincial or federal organizations, that they're in compliance with their financial rules. So there's a checklist of all these things that are necessary that can demonstrate. They're indicators that demonstrate how healthy an organization is. So I think it's a very good thing to have, and it keeps the riding associations strong. So we have similar rules as provincial members, and we make sure that throughout the entire year that we try to maintain those numbers, because it's something that will allow us to continue to grow and stay healthy as an organization. I think it's a good idea.
So another element is kind of soliciting that support for your nomination day. So some of the things that you can do, or somebody can do, is consider revisiting outdated membership lists, consider the barriers and hesitations for some to join a political party. I know we talked a lot about how membership fees might not necessarily be a problem anymore, since some parties are moving towards eliminating them as a whole. But some disenfranchised groups feel that getting involved in establishing politics is a bit of a problematic. So you need to kind of create a mitigation plan around those hesitations and concerns. You have to be willing to ask and meet with boards and executives of community organizations to garner support and endorsements. I know, Michael, you talked about the community organization. I think you said it was a union that kind of gave you support early on in your campaigns. Reach out to people at cultural and community events that may align with your partisan beliefs and see where they can kind of help you from there. And also in the age of social media, consider what level of targeted advertisements that you can be posting, or how you can start targeting certain groups on social media to gain followers of certain organizations and groups. Be ready to continuously sell yourself to established members. I think this is really important. Some of the rank and file party members who are involved with the local party organizations, but also be mindful to recruit new members to your party and bring new people forth. And consider what resources will be available and required to enable certain demographics to vote on nomination day. So there's transportation to the venue, extended voting hours, but also other things like if they need a translator or interpreter, if they'll need some kind of assisted help when they're doing it for some of the disabled communities. So there's a lot of things to be considering there. I don't know if any of these stand out to you, Michael, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I think you've obviously done your homework. This is a very comprehensive list of different things people can do within a riding to connect with people, and I think that one of the things that in every single riding there are going to be people who are upset with the current status quo, and really figuring out why are people upset. What has driven them to a point where they feel that the confidence within the current member is, obviously if it's an opponent, it's understanding what's happening in the riding, the issues that are taking place, why people, may not support the incumbent person and be seeking change. And it's really about, seeing if their concerns are aligned with yours and looking for ways to build a coalition. Soliciting support for nomination day is building a local coalition. What does your coalition look like? Who is going to be part of it? And without that coalition, you're not going to be able to really do what you need to do. And coalition building is a difficult thing. It is very complex because there are so many layers of different types of support and values. But I believe a successful politician is someone who can bring people together and find the things that actually connect people. And it seems to be a recipe for success if someone's planning to run for office.
So that's it for module 2. So we'll have some kind of closing remarks here. I just want to thank you on behalf of both of us and those working with us, Michael, for joining us and providing the support that you've provided.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity. This is really good stuff. I'm actually really impressed with it, and I can't wait to see the entire the complete set of modules. It will be very valuable for people. So let me know how I can participate in sharing the information.
Will do. And do you have any closing remarks for the people out there that are maybe on the kind of edge about deciding whether or not they want to put themselves forward?
Sure. Politics is really it's how we organize ourselves as a community, as neighborhoods, as a jurisdiction, like we do here in the province of Ontario. It's important that we empower people to represent us, but not give our voice away completely. And making sure that that representative is aligned with your values and what you believe in is an important thing. And if you disagree with that, there is a way to remove a politician from their position, and that's by organizing and participating at a different level. If you decide that you want to be the candidate, or you have someone in the community that you want to support, there's a lot of complicated processes someone would have to go through. and even more so if it's part of a political party that's trying to protect itself at the same time. But these processes were set up in a way to ensure that we get candidates who are committed to running, and I encourage anyone who really is thinking about, maybe not even today, but maybe sometime in the future, to get involved in politics by putting their name forward, to get the experience, and to get connected with people within that community. My final point is, it's hard to build a coalition in general, but it's much harder to build that coalition last minute. So your personal coalition of people who believe in what you stand for, this is something that could take, many years to build, and start now. That's all.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
So for those of you watching, the next module will be the front door pitch. So selling your movement to supporters. Follow us for these future module releases.